Not a suitcase, not a backpack, but a black plastic garbage bag, like I was trash being taken to the curb. Your dead father left us nothing but debt because of you, she spat in my face, her breath smelling like the menthol cigarettes she chain-smoked every morning. $500,000 in medical bills from trying to save you as a baby. You bankrupted this family before you could even walk. I stood on that porch in Clearwater, Kansas, holding that garbage bag while my stepbrother Damon watched from the window, smirking. My stepsister Bridget wouldn't even look at me. The woman who'd raised me since I was 3 years old looked at me with such disgust, you'd think I'd committed murder instead of just existing. 20 years later, I was mopping floors at Second Chance's halfway house in Denver when Ruth, my supervisor, knocked on the supply closet door. Jonah, there's some lawyer from New York on line 2, says he's been looking for you for 3 years, something about an inheritance. I almost laughed. Inheritance? From who? With what money? My family had made it crystal clear that I was worth less than nothing. But I took the call anyway, expecting some scam about a Nigerian prince or a long-lost relative who needed my bank account information. Mr. Jonah Reeves? The voice was professional, older, with that particular Manhattan accent that makes every sentence sound expensive. My name is Harrison Caldwell from Caldwell Associates. I represent the estate of Constance Atticus Reeves. Never heard of her. Wrong person. Please don't hang up. You are the son of William Atticus Reeves, correct? My hand froze on the receiver. Nobody knew my father's middle name. It wasn't on his death certificate, wasn't in his obituary, wasn't anywhere except my original birth certificate that I'd only seen once when replacing my ID at age 25. Atticus. Such a strange, distinctive name that I'd never forgotten it. How do you know that name? Because Constance Atticus Reeves was your grandmother, your father's mother, and she left you everything. My father was an orphan. He didn't have a mother. Your father ran away from home at 18 and never looked back. But Constance never stopped looking for him. When she found out what happened to you, what your stepmother did, she changed her entire will. Mr. Reeves, you've inherited approximately $89 million. The mop handle slipped from my hand and clattered on the floor. 89 million. The words didn't make sense. I'd spent 20 years sleeping under bridges, eating from dumpsters, believing I was so worthless that my own family couldn't afford to keep me. I'd believed my very existence was a debt that could never be repaid. But there's more, Caldwell continued, his voice gentle like he was trying not to spook a wild animal. Your stepmother lied to you. Your father didn't die in debt. He was actually quite wealthy when he died. He owned 3 hardware stores. He had life insurance, he had investments. Your medical bills were fully covered by insurance and a trust from your maternal grandparents. You never cost your family a single penny. The room started spinning. I grabbed the doorframe to stay upright. That's impossible. Vera said the bills were $500,000. She showed me the notices. She said collectors called every day. Mrs. Hutchins liquidated approximately $2 million in assets after your father's death. She told the probate court she was the sole beneficiary. Then she created an elaborate fiction about medical debt to justify what she'd done. Mr. Reeves, you were never a burden. You were a victim of theft and fraud. $2 million. The number echoed in my head. $2 million that should have been mine, that should have paid for college, for a home, for a life. Instead, I got a garbage bag and 20 years of believing I was worthless. We need to meet in person, Caldwell said. There are documents to sign, but more importantly, there's a letter from your grandmother. She wanted me to read it to you personally, to make sure you understood that you were loved, that you were always loved, even when it felt like the whole world had thrown you away. I thought about 16-year-old me, standing on that porch, convinced I'd destroyed my family just by being born. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed awake wondering what was so wrong with me that my own stepmother couldn't stand to look at me. I thought about every job I'd worked, every dollar I'd saved, trying to prove I wasn't expensive, wasn't a burden, wasn't too much. And now this lawyer was telling me it was all a lie, every single word of it. My name is Jonah Reeves. At 16, I was thrown away like garbage by a woman who stole my inheritance and then blamed me for the theft. At 36, I discovered that my worth was never measured in dollars and cents, but in the love of a father who died trying to protect me, and a grandmother who spent her final years trying to find me. This is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people who throw us away are actually setting us free to discover who we really are. And who I really am, it turns out, is nobody's garbage and everybody's proof that you can't put a price on a human soul. My name is Jonah Reeves, and until 3 months ago, I believed I was the reason my family lived in poverty. Every morning, I wake up in my studio apartment in Denver, a simple place with creaking floors and windows that don't quite shut all the way, but it's mine. After 20 years of sleeping wherever I could find shelter, having my own key still feels like a miracle. I work at Second Chance's halfway house, helping other people who've lived on the streets find their way back to something resembling normal life. Most days, I'm good at my job because I understand what it's like to believe you're beyond saving. Growing up in Clearwater, Kansas, our house was a constant reminder of everything we didn't have. The roof leaked every time it rained, and we'd scramble to put buckets under the drips. The furnace broke every winter, and we'd huddle around space heaters that Vera bought from yard sales. The kitchen table had one short leg that we propped up with a phone book from 1998. Everything in that house was broken, patched, or borrowed, and according to Vera, it was all my fault. "Your birth nearly killed you," Vera would tell me while serving dinner, always giving me the smallest portion. Complications during delivery, emergency surgery, 3 months in the NICU. Your father had to sell his business, mortgage the house, borrow from everyone we knew. $500,000, Jonah. That's what saving your life cost this family. She had a way of saying my name that made it sound like a curse. Even now, 36 years old, and 3 months into knowing the truth, I sometimes hear her voice when someone says my name. That sharp edge of resentment cutting through 2 syllables. My father, William Reeves, died in a car accident when I was 3 years old. The only memory I have of him isn't even real. It's just the photograph Vera kept on the mantel. In it, he's holding baby me in a hospital room, machines and wires visible in the background. He looks exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed and his clothes wrinkled, but he's smiling at me like I'm the most precious thing in the world. Vera would point to that picture whenever she wanted to hurt me. "Look how tired he was. Look what you put him through. He worked himself to death trying to pay those bills." Vera had married my father when I was 18 months old. She already had 2 children from her first marriage. Damon was 5 years older than me, built like a linebacker by the time he hit 14, and he never let me forget that I was the reason he couldn't have the things other kids had. "Mom says we could have had a pool," he'd tell me, pushing me into lockers at school. "Could have gone to Disney World. Could have had a lot of things if Dad hadn't wasted everything on keeping you alive." Bridget was 3 years older than me, quieter than Damon, but no less resentful. She had our father's gentle eyes, which made her coldness hurt more. "I know it's not technically your fault," she told me once when I was 12 and she was 15. "But every time Mom cries about money, every time I have to wear hand-me-downs to school, every time Damon talks about dropping out because we can't afford college, I think about that $500,000. What our lives could have been if you hadn't needed it. I learned to make myself small, invisible, unnecessary. I ate